oftentimes that woods would smell horrible, just like rotten animals. I was riding towards the woods, and I saw this big black hairy thing. It ran towards me really fast up towards the road, where I knew when I turned my bike around, I knew that there's no way I can outrun this thing.
This is the Cryptid Creatures Podcast. I'm Brian. With me, as always, is my co-host, Todd. How was your big week, Todd?
It's been real busy, and I got to tell you, once again, I'm kind of amazed with our episode tonight. Brian, do you realize that Indiana now holds the record for Bigfoot encounter episodes that we've done for state?
Yeah.
This is 3, isn't it?
Yeah, sure is.
3 Indiana Bigfoot encounters now.
Indiana, and not like southern Indiana.
Not even southern
middle,
Indiana.
Like middle Indiana.
When we started,
albeit close to the Ohio line, but still.
Right. Maybe somebody's trying to tell us something here. I don't know. Yeah. But
maybe we need to investigate more in Indiana.
And it's not like, when we reach out to people on, social media, it's not like we're in a specifically only to Indiana. We're reaching out to people all over the country, maybe all over the world. Even in England. And somehow we're coming back to here. This is awesome. I'll say that for sure, and it's amazing. But just a shout out to 3 for Indiana so far. Never thought that would happen.
Woo! Who's your Bigfoots?
If someone said that, who would you guess to be the first state to have the most encounters, or 3 encounters? I'd say, Washington or
obviously
Oregon, California.
Yeah. Hell, even Maine.
Maine? Not Indiana.
Maine.
But here we are.
Hotspot.
Here we are.
Yep, here we are.
And tonight we have Dana coming on. Dana from Indiana is coming on to tell her story.
That's right.
So,
is that it? Sounded like a pretty interesting one.
Again, we're having a great time with this. Listens are growing. Instagram followers are growing, and listens are growing. So we appreciate it. Guys, keep on listening.
Even Twitter is slowly but surely.
Is it? Yeah.
Yep. So we just want to thank all you guys for listening and participating and having fun and going on this quest with us.
Absolutely.
Good time.
And if you've seen something, had an encounter or some kind of incident, get a hold of us. Shoot us an email at info@cryptidcreatures.co.
For sure.
Or get a hold of us on Facebook or Instagram. Twitter. What else, Brian? Anything else? Check us out on YouTube. We're on YouTube now.
Yeah,
right.
You can subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Right. So, anyway, enough of that jibber jabber. Let's bring Dana on. You ready?
All right. Let's do it.
Here we go. Dana, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're excited you're here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So, Dana, the neat thing about you coming on is you're now our 3rd Indiana encounter.
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding. I never thought there'd be so many so close to home. It's wild.
I did not.
But, Indiana is such a conservative state that anyone that would see something, they're not going to talk about it. They're not going to tell.
Yeah.
I mean, this happened in
that is true.
1974, 1975. I'm just now talking about it. So I'm 55 years old. So I'm just now talking about the event.
So before we get into your encounter, Dana, why don't you tell us a little bit of your background, where you grew up, what you thought about Bigfoot or cryptids, before you had your encounter, and take us into that first.
Sure. So my encounter, I was probably 12 years old when it happened. Really didn't, I heard of Bigfoot, but the only pictures I ever saw of Bigfoot was standing on 2 feet. And coming from a conservative family, you just didn't believe in those types of things. So when I saw what I saw, first of all, it was running on 4 legs. I didn't see it standing on 2 legs. It didn't, at that time, I didn't realize what I realize now as an adult. And I just wasn't for sure what it was. And
what were you doing that day before you saw this thing? What was going on?
Sure. So I was riding my bike after dinner, and I would ride down the country road to the stop sign, turn around, ride back. There was a small woods, and it's all cornfields, and there's a small woods. Oftentimes, that woods would smell horrible, just like rotten animals. And I just thought, okay, well, a deer hunter probably gutted a deer there, or a coyote or a dog got hit by a car and went off in the woods and died. It just smelled like a dead, rotten animal. And so as kids, we would hurry up and ride past that woods because it always smelled. And I look back now and I'm thinking, these are things that now as an adult I would recognize. Like, there was tree breaks that at the time I thought, as a kid, oh, that's what a weird way the storm must have knocked those trees down. Not realizing now as an adult, looking back, a storm probably didn't do that.
Right.
And
Dana,
there was odd things about that woods.
Dana, can you share what kind of area of Indiana this was in?
Sure. This was in the southern part of Grant County, south of Marion, Indiana.
Okay.
Just north of a little town called Hackelman, out in the country. The woods, I did drive past there. The woods is no longer there. They've built some houses. So the landscape has changed than back in the 70s.
Are there any national parks or kind of, like reservation areas around there?
There's not reservation areas, but there is the Mississinawa River. There is the Salamone Reservoir. So there are heavily wooded areas.
And with water.
Yeah.
Yes, with water.
And during this time, you had mentioned earlier before we started talking on here that there was an encounter along that river, and that encounter was also mentioned in a previous episode we had with another gentleman on who had an Indiana encounter as well. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So, and that person, Dwayne, was the one that told me about this lady in Marion. That I guess it was in the Marion newspaper. I had no idea. So I just learned that there was someone else close by that had a similar encounter.
How close was that to you, where you had your encounter?
Sure. So it would be a 20-minute drive in a car. I was just south of Marion. Southwest of Marion.
So you guys as kids rode by this woods, you said every day pretty much, or was this to school or just?
Yeah, I mean, in the summer when you're a kid out in the country, there's nothing else to do.
Right.
You're surrounded by cornfields. So you ride your bike or play ball so yeah, we would ride our bikes past the smelly woods.
So why don't you take us into your encounter and tell us what happened, Dana?
Sure. So I was riding my bike. It was probably late August, because in Indiana, there's that saying, the corn has to be knee-high by the 4th of July to have a good crop.
Right. Yeah.
So this corn was probably a good 4.5 to 5 feet tall. And So I'm thinking it was probably the end of July, and was riding towards the woods, and I saw this big black hairy thing start like charging towards the road. So naturally it scared me. I turned my bike and was riding back home as quick as I could. And I knew, even as a kid, I knew that this thing was much faster than me. But by the time it got up to the road or near the road, it slowed its pace to match mine.
Okay.
And it didn't run like a dog, like an animal would run, left legs, left leg, right leg. It ran like both front legs, then both back legs.
Mm-hmm.
And you could hear it hitting the ground. Both front legs hit at the same time. Both back legs hit at the same time.
Gotcha.
So,
so he was running through the cornfield, and you saw a black mass coming towards you from the cornfield, and then he paralleled with you. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it ran towards me really fast up towards the road, where I knew when I turned my bike around, I knew that there's no way I can outrun this thing. So I'm just riding my bike as fast as I can, because I was about probably a mile away from my home. And then when it paralleled, it slowed its pace to match mine. It easily could have outran me, and it didn't. But I could see, it was dark. I could see the facial shape. It was not a dog. It had a flat, the head, the face area was flat. It didn't have a nose like a dog. I knew it wasn't a dog. And by the time I got home, I ran in the house and, I ran in the house and told Mom, and she said, "Oh, it's just a dog. Don't worry about it." But it wasn't.
Did you notice the smell then? Did you notice the odor, Dana, then at the time as it was chasing you?
No, at that time I did not smell the odor, no. And I don't know if that's something they can control, or if it was just that I was so panicked that
I think they can control that, but also you're riding your bike, so you got the wind in your face, so you probably weren't smelling too much
I was
of anything.
just I was so panicked I probably wasn't even breathing, to be honest with you.
Did you have any idea what it was? Did you think Bigfoot?
No, at that time I didn't realize what it was, because again, any pictures I ever saw of Bigfoot, they're standing on 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
This was on all fours. But I remember how heavy the feet, you could just feel it, how heavy when the feet were hitting the ground.
Right.
And I could see how wide it was by the way the corn had moved when it was racing towards me at the road. So I got an estimation of how wide the thing was.
How wide do you think it was?
It was moving easily three rows of corn. Its shoulders.
Wow.
That's pretty wide.
How tall, even in all fours, how tall do you think its back was?
I believe it was at least 5 foot tall from the shoulders down to the ground. Because the corn was probably a good 4.5 to 5 feet tall.
So when it was doing this running thing, was it keeping its legs and arms extended straight the whole time and kind of, bouncing itself that way, or?
To be honest, I couldn't tell if the legs were. I believe the back legs were bent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if the front legs were bent or not.
Yeah. I've heard of them running like that. I've heard of them running on 2 legs. I've heard of them kind of running on 3, like a football player. I've kind of heard of them running that style. That kind of, I don't know if it's not really a gallop. I don't know what you call it. But yeah, they kind of push off with their back legs, and they land on their front, and they push off their front until their backs hit, and they just kind of stride like that. in a weird way.
It kind of reminded me, honestly, of like frog hopping or something.
Mm-hmm.
But because you could hear it, the pound was the same. Like there was a pound for the front legs. There was a pound for the back legs. So I believe that the legs, the feet were hitting at the same time, and the hands were hitting at the same time.
I gotcha. Did it make any noise? But like, did it sound like? Did it growl or scream or yell?
No. Nope. The only noise I heard was the heaviness of the feet and the corn breaking and.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a pretty scary experience for a kid.
Yeah.
So when you got home, did you tell your parents or your mom or?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, my dad worked second shift, so he wasn't home. I told my mom, who just completely dismissed it and, said, oh, I can't remember now even what it was. Well, go to your room and play or go clean your room, or it was completely dismissed as it was just a dog that scared me, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. That's right. You had mentioned that earlier. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There's just, you know the difference between a dog.
A dog would have come out of the corn, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that was my experience. And
when you
as an adult, I can look back and I can see things that I didn't articulate as a younger person.
Uh-huh.
But, like the tree breaks, how the woods always smelled.
Did you ever feel like you were being watched when you were riding by in those woods?
Oh yeah, yeah, I did.
When you got home that evening and told your mom, then you went into your room. Did you lay up all night? Were you still scared? Obviously, were you thinking it was going to be looking in your window? What were you thinking then?
Yeah, it did affect me for a long time. I couldn't sleep at night. If I didn't ride my bike down to that woods, and if I did ride my bike, it was with friends, or it was early in the day. I never rode down past that woods again.
And you've never had any experience since that time?
Nope, that was it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about Bigfoot, Dana? I mean, do you look into that stuff? Have you, since that incident encounter? Do you read about it or investigate?
Yeah, I have been curious about it, and I have read about it because, it was something as a kid that I wasn't believed, and it makes sense because things that I recall at that time, it was out of being naive. I didn't have the knowledge base that as an adult I have now, where I've heard, yes, they do run on all fours. Yes, they are very fast. And this thing was extremely fast.
Mm-hmm.
And like the odor, the tree breaks, these are all things that as an adult I've researched and looked into, and it corroborates my event.
How many years had you noticed that smell, or was it just that 1 year that the incident happened, or had it been a while?
It wasn't consistent, but if I do recall that summer, it was worse than usual. It wasn't a consistent thing where it always smelled. It seemed like that summer was worse than any other summer.
Right. So, what do you think? What do you think about Bigfoot? Do you think this thing is obviously you believe it's flesh and blood? Do you think there's more to it than just that? Do you think these things are hiding out in the woods in Indiana and other states, and they're not being seen that often? Or what's your theory on these things, Dana?
Well, I do think they exist. I think that this may be one that perhaps was traveling. I don't think that it consistently lived there because, one, the woods is just too small and there's too many hunters in that area. So I think it was just one that was traveling. maybe it was, it didn't seem aggressive, but I've heard of stories where they are pretty aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it wasn't threatened by me.
Right.
Well, it sounds like
I've also heard the stories about them being more fascinated with the children than anything else.
Yeah.
More curious about the kids, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That could be. Maybe it never saw a kid on a bicycle before. I don't know. But as an adult, I wish, man, if my mom or brothers would have just believed me, we could have went out there and probably got some good tracks in that field.
Yeah, most likely you would have for sure. This thing was just barreling down corn stalks as it was just coming at you, though, with no problem.
If it was that big, yeah.
Yeah, it was a perfect path. You could follow it right along and probably got some really good tracks. These are all things that I'm thinking about as an adult that, I didn't even think about as a kid.
Mm-hmm. You say those woods are pretty much gone now?
Yeah, they are. I drove past the area just a couple months ago, and the woods is gone. It's a field, and along that road, there's been new houses built.
Gotcha. Okay.
So if you pull up Grant County and you go south of Grant County, okay, so you would take, so if you're going south of Marion, you've got Fairmount. And in between Fairmount and Point Isabel, if you look at the map, there's a little town called Hackelman. And it was probably a mile, maybe 2 miles north of Hackelman.
Okay.
So it was in between Highway 26 and Highway 35.
All right.
So if you go north of that, then that's when you will run into the reservoir areas, because north of Marion there's the Salamone Reservoir and the Missinawal Reservoir.
Okay. Are there any cave systems in that area that you know of, Dana?
There is a small man-made cave in the Missinawal Reservoir that I used to take my kids fish. My dad used to take me fishing there. I used to take my kids fishing there. But most of the time it's underwater if the river's up high.
Okay.
And the only other caves that I know of are in southern Indiana.
Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if he was hanging out in that reservoir and this is kind of like you said, traveling through, or maybe heading south to those areas down in
right, or maybe heading north to Michigan. I'm not sure. I mean, if I was traveling and wanting to be unseen, that would be the place I'd go, is out in the country, in the tall corn and wooded areas.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think this was a bear? At first, did you think?
I did. I thought about it, but there's no bears in Indiana.
No.
I mean, this is the middle of Indiana. There's no bears here other than what's in zoos. And and besides that, if you look at TV and you look at how a bear walks, they're walking left, right. They're not. They don't walk like that.
So as you said, this thing followed
also, again, it's not far from Ohio.
Oh.
That's true, yeah. It's just a couple hours away from Ohio.
And there is a big park.
Well, is that near Defiance in that area, Brian? That kind of, where those other encounters have been taking place?
Salina.
Yeah.
Coldwater.
So how long did this...
A little farther south.
How long did this thing, you said it paralleled you and then you just kind of took off down your road and it left, or you pulled away from the cornfield, so to speak, or?
Yeah, I was riding my bike in the middle of the road because I didn't want to be close to the cornfield. And I would say it was probably, I don't know, maybe 4 rows into the field. It was far enough where I really couldn't see its face, but I could see that its shape, and I could see that it was, long black hair with maybe a little bit of brown, but it didn't come out of the corn. And when I got close to the row of houses that I lived at, it turned and ran running right back into the middle of the field. So it didn't get up close to my house, but it went, like I said, when the end of the row of houses, that's when it pulled away.
So it never saw you go to your house, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully it didn't follow you.
Probably didn't know which house I lived in unless it saw my bike in the yard.
That's interesting. I wonder if it did that to any other kids out there. Or
yeah, no kidding.
Just happened to choose you.
That I don't know, but I would say that if it did, probably nobody would talk about it simply because it was a very conservative community.
Right.
So you said you told your mom and that was it, and you had not spoken to anyone about it then just till recently, is that right?
Right. No, I didn't talk about it because I thought people would think I was crazy. And in my field of work, you don't want people thinking you're crazy.
Right.
I'm in the scientific community, and this kind of thing is frowned upon, but I wouldn't have believed it. If I hadn't actually seen it, I would never have believed it.
Right.
Yeah.
No matter how many stories you were told or how many incidences you knew about, you would not have believed it until you saw it for yourself. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yeah. I would not have believed it until but the fact that I saw it for myself is why I know it's real.
Yeah. And I haven't had an encounter. Brian hasn't had an encounter. We want to.
Not yet.
I think. But we strongly believe because of stories like yours and people that come on and talk to us. And,
absolutely. And there's just too much evidence out there to not be.
Right. There's too many encounters, too many sightings, eyewitness reports. These people aren't just making this up,
No.
Right. And if you look at the type of people, I mean, there's well-educated people in scientific communities and the medical community and like the police officer. I mean, they're...
Yeah, Dwayne, yep.
Yeah, there's just too much for people like that to lose.
Right.
I mean, why would they make up a lie like
that?
Why
would they? Yeah, they have no reason to lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wait, like you guys did, until you're older to talk about stuff because of those reasons, or just because people get to a point where it's like, I don't care what people think about me. I'm going to just tell what I know and get this off my chest.
Right. And I'm fine with you guys saying I'm not using my real name. And the reason I'm not using my real name is because of my career. I just don't want...
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
We understand.
We don't blame people for that. And we've had several people come on and use aliases, and that's fine.
So, but I do feel like there are more avenues now than they were even 10 years ago for people to discuss their events, Facebook groups and stuff where you can feel like you can talk about it without the ridicule or the negative stigma.
For the most part, yeah. There's some out there that still people get on and
there's still some haters out there. But
that's why we like to do
this.
That's
why we started this. You know?
We want people to come here and feel safe and tell their stories and not be ridiculed.
Right.
And they won't be. So.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thanks.
We appreciate you coming on.
To be discussed, yeah.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on too. And we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you guys. So.
Yeah.
Danny, you had also told me on the phone earlier that you had an encounter with some kind of entities. Why don't you tell us about that?
When I was 5, my little brother was not born yet, and my mom and dad had made arrangements with their friends that I would stay with, me and my older brother would stay with their friends when my mom went into labor. So my mom went into labor. They got us kids, put us in the car, was driving to their friend's house to drop us off so that my dad could take my mom to the hospital. And I refused to get out of the car. I started screaming. My mom got out of the car. My dad was trying to pull me out of the car. I was hanging onto the seat belts and everything like that. Would not get out of the car. And my mom said I just kept crying that the death angels were there. I wasn't going to be there. The death angels were there. And it was I threw such a fit that they actually had to get back in the car, drive me to another friend, and we stayed there. And I was 5 when that occurred. Had no idea what a death angel was. But I saw 2 figures, one standing by their garage, one standing by a tree. They were black figures with red eyes. And I knew that they were death angels because they were going to take people away. A couple weeks after that happened, the man shot his wife in the garage because he accused her of having an affair. He shot his wife and killed her and turned the gun on himself and shot himself. And
wow.
So I knew that because they were death angels. That's why they were there.
So you,
as a 5-year-old, I had no idea. Never heard of that terminology. It was never talked about.
So you just called them death angels. You didn't know anything about them at 5 years old, and you saw these things standing there. You said they were dark and red eyes. Could you give any more detail?
Yeah, they were humanoid in shape, but their fingers were really long. Just jet black, red eyes, and the one that was standing by the tree smiled at me, and it was just blood red mouth. And
did it have a human face?
Yeah, they were shaped like humans.
How tall were they?
That I don't remember. I mean, they looked adult size to me. I was just
they're 5 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I knew enough to be terrified of them, and of course my mom and dad just thought I was nuts. Didn't, what's wrong with us kids, And but with her being in labor, they couldn't wait around, so they had to drive. And he killed his wife and then turned the gun on himself and killed himself. I do agree with the Native Americans when they say it's, there's a spiritual element to this. I think it is physical. It can be physical. Obviously, it's leaving footprints, so there is a physical body. But I do believe that there may be a spiritual element in it as well.
I tend to think so too. It's got to help explain, why we haven't proven these things. Partly, I guess, to a point, but nobody really knows, I guess.
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out.
You know what? I think that we're eventually going to know sooner than we think. I think it's going to all come out.
Dana, we appreciate you coming on again, and if you have any other incidences or encounters where you're at, be sure to get a hold of us and let us know what's going on.
Sure.
Or if you hear of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't live in the area anymore.
Oh, okay.
But if I hear of anything, I will definitely direct it to you.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd appreciate it.
Well, sounds good. And we'll stay in touch on Facebook too as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
For sure.
All right. You have a good one. Thanks again.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. You if you've ever thought about doing your own podcast, you should use Anchor. It's free, it has editing and creation tools, and you can make money at it. Download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started for free.
Well, Brian, there's another good episode in the books, man. What do you think?
I thought it was pretty cool.
Definitely.
I don't believe I could have stayed on my bike if that had happened to me. I'd have probably done Bigfoot food.
Yeah, to keep your concentration and not like slip off or have an accident would have been pretty tough. But she was determined to get out of there for sure, as I would have been too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And her talking about those the death angels that she saw, that gave me some goosebumps for sure.
Man. Yeah, I had the hair standing up on my arms for that one. That was good.
It's good
I'm
stuff.
glad she told us that one.
Maybe we can find another state that has some encounters besides our own next time.
Why?
Why not? Right?
Why not
just keep it home? Keep it closer to home, right?
Yeah. If anybody's listening in England too, I hear they have some Bigfoot over there. They can
Sure, I'd love to get
a hold of us. Let us know what's going on across the pond.
I would love to get one of those, encounters from over there. Sure, just to hear their accents too would be cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, we appreciate the listens and keep it up. Thanks for following us. And again, if you had an encounter, get a hold of us at info@cryptidcreatures.co and follow us and get a hold of us on Facebook and Instagram.
And Twitter. And YouTube.
Right. We are YouTube, so. All right, Brian. Thanks for hanging out with me again, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Always fun.
All right.
Always learning.
Right on, man. Until next time.
All right.
See you.
See you.